Since returning from Ferguson, I've been trying to sort out my experiences and the lessons learned there. My understanding of Marxist theory brought to life in the struggle. Marx talks about a veiled civil war raging within society up to the point where that war breaks out in an open revolution. The police murder of Michael Brown was a tipping point in Ferguson, Missouri. The people that we met and marched with are overwhelmed with grief and anger. And because they won't accept what has happened, they have come up against a combined force of state terror, militarized occupation, cops armed with high-tech weaponry, advanced military hardware for crowd control, and squashing social protest. Along with the violence turned against them, the slanderous media and even many of the social institutions in their community are attempting to force them to return to the past. In the face of all the repression, we saw the other side of it. The courageous and relentless resistance that is empowering the people. They are transcending the repression through their struggle. They are aware that the whole world is responding, creating a greater consciousness of their community. We saw many expressions of it. It was like the rapid changes in relations that occurred during a worker strike or a revolution. That's what I want to talk about. And I'm going to plagiarize what's been written in our newspaper by Larry Hales, Deirdre, Abayomi, and most of all Monica. The 1% uses an enormous bureaucratic military organization with its media, violent high-tech military. It's an appalling, parasitic body which enmeshes the whole country to retain their ruling power. The African American community in Missouri has a grim history to begin with. The Emancipation Proclamation in Missouri was 2 years later. It was 2 years late. That area was home to many of the night riders who terrorized the free states. Those like Jesse James are celebrated in the popular bourgeois culture. We've all seen that. But we don't all know who they really were, who these people really were. Now, Michael Brown was gunned down in a hail of bullets on August 8th. Since then, the air in Ferguson, Missouri has been choked with smoke bombs and tear gas. They even tear gassed a small child. Protesters were wounded with rubber bullets. Dozens of people were arrested. There was a curfew, and then the Democratic governor, Jay Nixon, known to have supported segregation, declared martial law. Many more were arrested. Not even those participating in the rebellion, but because the police picked them out of a crowd. Ferguson is one of the many small suburbs in St. Louis County. It's more than 2/3 black. At this point in history, martial law was not going to stop this community. In fact, the longer the police refused to release the murderous cop's name, the more the rebellion grew in Ferguson and in St. Louis County. On August 19th, a 23-year-old black man, Kajami Powell, was gunned down by the St. Louis police, and the rebellion grew. Then, the state blinked. In fact, the whole government blinked. The National Guard was withdrawn, at least from being right in your face. Everybody was reporting that they were seeing National Guard around, but they weren't as out in front as they had been. Attorney General Holder arrived a day before us, and the tactics of repression were moderated by the time we arrived. But there was no let-up in the degrading and dangerous onslaught of repression. All the roads were blockaded. There is a large central road in Ferguson, and it's maybe about 12 blocks long, where everybody gathers to protest. The cops had blockaded both ends of this road. It's West Florescent. West Florescent. The first night we arrived there, we were questioned, and we sort of said, well, we're visiting somebody, a relative in the community, and so they let us through. You know, we were sort of surprised, but we got through. And let me see here. The next night, which was Friday night, we were turned away. After being turned back, we drove around. We found that every little side street in Ferguson that led into the main artery was blockaded with multiple barriers, at least one on each street, being a big cement road divider. It was a war zone. The whole community was being punished. A resident told us that he was worried about a diabetic mother who wouldn't be able to get emergency aid because everything was shut down and closed off. You couldn't drive anywhere. People were trying to get home to their houses, and we'd see cars looping around and around trying to find ways to get home. There were marches and activities throughout the whole area. Now, Amani kept us up to date by following what was posted on social media. But even local activists said that they were kept discovering new developments. Things were just cropping up all over every day. You know, the whole community was so enlivened and moving. You know, now, in spite of the ominous police occupation, people gathered on Florescent every evening, and they marched chanting, you know, we are, you are, I am Michael Brown. And we're young. Now this had a real rhythm to it. We're young, we're strong, we're marching all night long. And then hands up, don't shoot. And sometimes it was shoot back. People marched with fury, their arms raised when they were saying, don't shoot, hands up. They're saying, hands up, don't shoot. They were being forced by the police to keep marching, and they would go down the street, hands up, don't shoot. And they were kept moving pretty fast. They were marching with the fury, and they were being forced to march in a long line down the sides of the street without being allowed to stop and rally. Every time that they tried to gather in some little conversation, the cops would keep roughly sort of intervene and say, keep moving, keep moving. And, you know, the cops were all armored with this big gear, you know. And the presence of the armed cops escalated rapidly at every evening, with military-looking formations, you know, growing. Every few blocks you'd see like there'd be this military formation, and it sort of got more threatening as the evening went on. After we parked on Friday night, and you know, this was after we'd been blockaded, and we drove around through the streets trying to find the closest place we could to get down to the protest. We got out of the car and we circled through these little side streets, and we found we're not alone, because there were people coming through trying to find their way to the protest, walking the pitch dark down these little streets. But overhead, there was a drone circling the whole time, you know, a drone circling in the sky, and below it was a helicopter with floodlights flashing people's homes up and down all these little streets. The main street was completely shut down. But even though the street was completely empty, the police forced the people off the street, far off onto the side, where it was dark and you couldn't see where you were going. It was frustrating and humiliating. When the youth tried to sit down and protest, a growing body of the police forced them up. And then the cops began to push everybody into a blockaded area off the road at the end of the strip. There was a weird formation of police. There were some state troopers there, were like smiling and trying to shake people's hands, while the local cops stood around them, looking as menacing as they could. Now, as every assault on, as in every assault on the oppressed, the media acts heavy artillery, creating misinformation. And they put forth the rotten program of the oppressors. TV, the newspapers, the radio, they pass along as truth the lies and slanders of the police. I know you've heard it all, so I'm not going to even go there. But, of course, they also talk about calm and quiet. And they want calm and quiet to return to Ferguson. They want to continue racist unemployment, grinding poverty, and brutal repression that cuts down the most proud and promising youth. If it's even possible, they're intensifying the oppression and the exploitation of the poorest people in order to create greater division, to lower the quality of living conditions, to force all workers to take the brunt of a decaying capitalist system while they rake off the wealth that we've created. But the black community of Ferguson has been pushed too far. Their fight is a game changer.